First of all, I just wanted to thank Peg, with whom I've taken several classes, and Why There Are Words for this wonderful opportunity. I'm going to read out of my book, Daddykins, which is about the last 2 years with my father before he passed away in Chennai, which is a town in South India. My father worked for most of his life. He died at the age of 90, and he worked until March, 4 months, until 16 weeks before he passed away. And when I'd also like to mention that I interpreted this particular theme as that aging and dying can essentially make someone feel lost. And you'll see as I read that my father is literally lost in his home. And before I begin, I also have to say that my father was taken care of by a gentleman called Vinayakam. Vinayakam is the name of the Hindu god Ganesha, the elephant-headed god Ganesha. Vinayakam took care of my parents until the end of their lives. And it's important for you to know that as I read. The title of the book is Die, and the title of the chapter that I'm reading from is Die Another Day. Every chapter in my book begins with a vignette. All of these vignettes appeared as Facebook posts, by the way. So, Die Another Day. 12 weeks before my father, Daddykins, died, when the heat was rising to a broil, my sister told visiting cousins that she was considering hiring the services of a palliative care team to oversee our father's care. Daddykins cut her short with the knife edge of his tongue. Palliative care? Yes, she said. But I don't need that. Everyone fell silent. No one dared look at Daddykins. Who says I need palliative care? Daddykins said. That's for people who are going to die. Following his birthday, my father resembled a mammal in estivation. Like a wombat in dormancy, he was in a state of suspension from the real world, rationing the use of stored energy. Except for the 2 hours when he seemed to will himself to go to work, he was simply going through the motions of existing. Daddykins' diet had now been watered down to coffee, tea, clear soups, and ensure. He still read The Hindu, which is a newspaper, in the morning after a 20-minute walk. The bank complained that his signatures didn't look like his hand. He was irregular with jotting expenses in his account book. When his sisters and a few other friends and relatives called on the phone to talk, Vinayakam stopped handing the telephone to him. When they asked to hear Daddykins' voice, my father talked to them in a disembodied fashion, speaking in euphemisms about his health. I sensed his estrangement from the world in other things too. He didn't listen to music anymore. He stopped telling us what was going on at the office. He spent long hours in his room, shuffling papers or simply looking for things. Daddykins seemed lost in his own home. One evening, I found him in that state, in front of his open Almira, in his bedroom. He couldn't find the salary envelope for Vinayakam. He hobbled over to the bed and sank into it. Please pardon me, he said, looking helpless. I sat down next to him and stroked his head, feeling a few errant white hairs beneath my fingers. I hugged him. In my arms, he felt like a seashell on Marina Beach. I heard his heartbeat in the hollow of his chest. The night before, my father had counted Vinayakam's salary several times. He had given me the recycled window envelope with the money. I had verified the amount, marked it Vinayakam, shown him the envelope, and then put it away in Daddykins' presence in the left side of his drawer. I got up and walked over to his Almira and pulled out the envelope. My father's face flushed with relief. You know, sometimes I do want to die, he said, taking the envelope, frustrated about his increasing dimness. He looked up at me, but then I realized I cannot leave this world. What's holding you back? I asked. I have 2 girls. They are still young, he said. They need me. I cannot die. In most countries, my sister and I would now qualify for retirement. On application forms, Urmila, who's 11 years older than I am, who had 3 grandchildren, with a 4th on the way, had almost reached the ceiling on age check boxes. I was fighting to stay up at the checkbox marked 55 and below. But Daddykins believed that we could not take care of ourselves. I kissed my father on the forehead. I wondered why humans couldn't be like the African wildebeest that moved on, sometimes leaving its injured child to be eaten by the lion. The faces of my 2 children swam up towards me for a second, articulate, stubborn, mature enough to trounce my opinions, old enough to live on their own, possibly bold enough to buy condoms and get drunk. But my daughter and my son would be my babies until the day I died. That night, I understood exactly what my father meant. Daddykins suffered several setbacks in September, the week of his birthday. But we managed to ferry him on a day trip to the shore temples of ancient Mahabalipuram, 40 miles away from Chennai. Vinayakam drove us, a flask of hot milk, a diaper, some ensure powder in a Ziploc bag, a few towels, and a box of tissues and water, and we were ready to drive off that weekday morning after commute traffic thinned on the roads. Miles of brown casuarinas separated the spanking highway from the Bay of Bengal. My sister told me how in the tsunami of 2004, those casuarina trees had buffered the coast from extreme damage. The grizzly tree reminded me of my father. He had planned ahead for most emergencies. His small investments had paid regular dividends, so he could live his life in his way without having to depend on us girls. The day after our mother passed away, my father transferred his apartment to us. He had returned home after the paperwork, his crooked smile belying his sadness at having entered a new phase in his life as a widower. As of now, I'm truly homeless, he said, even as my sister and I reprimanded him, crushing him between the 2 of us. I imagined myself returning to an apartment still charged with the exoskeleton of his life, his t-shirts, his favorite pair of walking shoes, his belt, his handkerchief, his glasses, his pen, his watch. I would witness his smile once again through his dentures, those beaming bridges to a lost youth that would never let the shape of his laughter dissolve. I felt alone. When my mother passed on, she gouged out parts of me to take with her. Daddykins' death would carve out yet another chunk of my being. We began seeing signs for Mahabalipuram all around us. Palmyra and coconut trees poked into the sky, silhouetted against wisps of white clouds on the powder blue yonder, just as they lined every highway from Kanyakumari through the Deccan Plateau. Mahabalipuram had been a bustling seaport during the time of Ptolemy. In the distance, the temple pagodas rose, stenciled in muddy brown. The rocks had transcended the vids of kings and the moods of the sun, their youth forever locked in the elephantine memory of ocean and sky. Thank you very much.